It's time for Hustle Her podcast. I'm your host, Deshae Keynes. Hustle Her is all about inspiring women through real life experiences that have helped to mold and develop not only me, but my guests into the entrepreneurs and leaders we are today. If you're an enterprising woman determined to succeed and looking for a bit of motivation, a bit of tough love, and some actionable takeaways to be the best you, girl, you are in the right place. Hey guys, and welcome back to Hustle Her podcast. As always, thank you for spending some time with me today. I'm super grateful that you decided to join us. Make sure you head over to the website, DeshaeKeynes.com, to check out all the content that we have, all of our previous episodes, as well as this current episode. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Big shout out to our season sponsors, 59 Front, as well as Browning Company, and our newest sponsors, Scooter Mart. So, my guest for today is someone that I just recently met, but I was awe-inspired by her conversation at the conference that we were at. She was so thoughtful in the way that she entered the conversation, as well as very inspiring with the words that she was saying to us. She gave us a very holistic approach to the topic, and I thought to myself, she's got to be on the podcast. So please join me in welcoming the amazing Michelle Seymour-Smith.
Thanks,
Welcome,
Deshae.
Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. All right, so we'll jump in with some quick questions and then we'll go from there. All right?
Yeah.
Ready? All right. What's always on your nightstand?
Books. Lots and lots of books that I can't always get to.
I know, that's exactly.
Got to move to digital.
I know. I
Can't
like the feel of a book, though.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm big on that. All right. Tea or coffee to start the day?
Always coffee.
Always coffee.
Jet fuel.
I know. I'm trying the matcha thing, but still need my coffee.
Coffee.
All right. What was your favorite book as a child?
Oh, I loved Little House on the Prairie. I read all of them, And then when my daughter was around the age, I bought the set for her, and she's like, "These are the worst books I've ever read. Why would you give these to me?"
Were you heartbroken?
I was. I loved them. I love them.
Okay. What's your go-to way to relax after a long day?
Meditate. I probably don't do it as much as I should, but during pandemic, I got back into it, and I would say when I'm really stressed, at the end of the day, that's probably the best thing. If it's first thing in the morning, actually a walk outside is always kind of my preferred way to kind of calm down.
Okay. And who inspires you right now?
I would actually say my kids right now. My kids are right at that age. My daughter's about to graduate. My son is 11 going on 17. And there's an element of the relationship is shifting. And I'm really amazed with these people they're going into. So I would say they're really inspiring me. I did a talk at BHS, and while my daughter's not a student there, her friends are, and she was like, "Don't embarrass me." So it's really living up to like their standards.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it sure is.
So
yeah.
I'm sure you did great. All right, what's a phrase you currently live by?
I'm drawing a blank.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, if you think about it, let me know. We'll go from there. What's one word your friends would use to describe you?
Generous, I think. Generous with time, generous with advice, generous. Yeah.
Good. Okay. What's a hidden talent or surprising fact that no one knows?
I'm a Reiki practitioner.
Reiki?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I have questions,
Okay,
but we'll get back to that. Okay. What's one place you've always wanted to visit but you haven't yet?
New Zealand.
Okay. On the list for sure.
Yeah.
And what's one thing you wish more people knew about you?
I think there's a really soft and creative side to me. I think oftentimes people outside my personal life, people know me corporate-wise, and I have this very technical background as a CFO, a CTO, as, in the insurance world.
Yeah.
And I think in my heart, I'm actually an artist, and I'm very creative, and it's kind of the antithesis of the accountant, which is hard facts. Like I really like to paint. I like to meditate. I do energy healing. So there's this very soft spiritual side to me that I think unless you're in my inner circle, you probably don't know.
Okay, that's good. All right, I'm definitely intrigued. And finally, because we're so close to cut match, what's your cut match team?
St. George's.
All right, interview over. We're done. We're done. It's okay. I'll give you a bye for right now. And we know Somerset will keep the cup, so that's okay.
They probably will. I'll still cheer for St. George's,
It's hard being a St. George's fan.
These days it is.
All right, so take me back to young Michelle growing up in Spanish Point with your family.
So I was the middle child, and I have classic middle child syndrome. I'm the negotiator, the peacemaker. My older sister was the boss. My younger brother, was the rebel. And I was
on brand.
Yeah. We fit right into those classic molds.
Yeah.
And I was painfully shy. We had a big noisy house, and I was the kid who would always take a book and kind of crawl into like this little nook where no one could find me in and stay away. But what was lovely growing up in Spanish Point was all the kids we went to school with, our friends our age, all lived in Spanish Point. Just happened to be that way. And from our house was like the road furthest from the point. So it was kind of this invisible line that from our road towards the end of Spanish Point, we literally had free reign of the neighborhood. And you could just leave your house, you just go running, be like, tell your parents, I'll be back in time for dinner, and you just went off, and the beach was down at the end, so it was pretty magical. I think about how my kids are raised now, and everything is a play date, or you have to schedule.
So structured.
It's so structured. We had the complete opposite. It was just like, come home, do your homework, and just go run barefoot until it got dark. When the street lights came on, you knew you had to go home.
That was like a real thing. I didn't have the street lights conversation, but we definitely played outside when I was little. But being able to just run freely, you just don't see kids doing that anymore.
Yeah, and we knew all the people down the point, so it was like telephone tag. So if my mom couldn't find one of us, she'd call the next neighbor along, they'd call the next one, eventually you'd come home. So it was great.
Yeah, so speaking of your mom, you mentioned to me that one of the greatest privileges you've had in life was having the parents that you've had. Like, what values or lessons do you carry with you from your parents?
So my parents, my dad was Bermudian, my mom is Portuguese from the Azores, and neither of them, they grew up fairly poor, and they didn't really have opportunity. My dad started work at 12. In those days in Bermuda, you could finish school right after, I guess, right before middle school, whatever.
What we call middle school now.
Yeah. And my mom in the Azores, you only started school at 7. So she only went to school from 7 to 12. And so they were really hardworking, and they really valued education. And they were determined that we were going to have the best education and all the opportunity that they didn't. So that's why I always say it's my greatest privilege I had my parents, because they pushed us and they sacrificed so that we could have a good education. And I always say everything I have is because my parents gave that to me.
Yeah, I know, I love it. My grandmother is Jamaican, she is here with us present. And so it's a very similar dynamic, I think, for my father and his siblings as well. But you said your mom moved to Bermuda from the Azores. Like, what was that like, that dynamic like in your household culturally, having a mom from the Azores and growing up in Bermuda?
I think you don't really know anything else. But I will say I always felt like I wasn't Portuguese enough, and I wasn't Bermudian enough. I didn't speak Portuguese. My mom didn't speak it to us at the time when she came. Her brothers were ridiculed for speaking Portuguese, so she didn't speak it to us, and my dad didn't speak it. But we had all the food.
Yeah.
So like I can make all the Portuguese goodies.
I can't make all over.
Between me, my sister, my brother, and I think we could all call, and my niece is making this amazing Portuguese goodies now. So, but I grew up with the food.
Okay.
So culturally, it was very strict. We were Catholic, and guilt is a real thing in the Portuguese Catholic community. So I grew up with that. But at the same time, and my mom was super strict. Actually, my son asked me recently, like, oh, can I tell Granny this? I'm like, I don't think Granny's gonna like that. I'm like, Granny was really strict with me. He goes, well, did you just rebel? And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't. So I was really that diligent daughter. I did what was expected to me, even in my career, in those days it was tourism or accounting, and she wanted me to have good education, good jobs. So I'm like, yeah, I'll be an accountant and go do those things.
Yeah.
So.
What do you think? Do you think it's different now in terms of like the acceptance of the Portuguese culture in Bermuda and speaking Portuguese, like more than when your mom or you were little with your mom?
Definitely. And I would like to think that generally society has become more accepting all around. There's always work to be done, but I would say I'll give you a story. My mom, so we all have our Portuguese passports. And my mom said, I can't believe there came a day where this would be of value, because in my day, everybody was trying to hide the fact that they were Portuguese. So I think collectively, I hope that people, are more accepting of Portuguese, of interracial relationships, and people of all kind of backgrounds and sexual preference and everything.
Yeah.
So it's definitely more open than when I was growing up, and hopefully it'll keep going that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned your mom saying being an accountant or different things like that. And when we were chatting, you told me that you knew you wanted to be an accountant at 13. Like, so tell me a bit of what that experience was like, figuring out that you wanted to be an accountant at 13.
So these things only happen in Bermuda. So we were working from a young age, and my mom worked at Trimmingham, so I was the Easter Bunny. I folded the accounts, and I got an opportunity through a family friend to go to what was then Johnson Higgins and is now Marsh, to go into the office and help her with filing. And that sounded like a lot more fun than being the Easter Bunny or spraying perfume on people, which were all the things I had to do. And so at like 13 or 14, I was in this big corporate office. I was taking checks up to the CEO, which tells
Can you imagine?
like not just the CEO, but taking checks. And I remember very distinctly, I was working during one of my school breaks, and the department that had me working was next to the accounts payable department. And they were like, well, can you help us do general ledger entries? And of course, I didn't know what that was. And
This was at 13.
at 13, yeah,
Wow.
13 or 14.
Wow.
And so they gave me the entries to put in the general ledger. And that was one of my first exposures to a computer, where doing data input in a computer.
How big were those computers at that time?
I don't know that I'm sure they had the mainframes and all of that. I remember the green and white printout with like the holes in it. But so I was like, oh, this is fun. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like, I didn't have a slate of options. It was tourism or that. And so I was like, yeah, I can do this. So in that moment, I decided to be an accountant. And I was the kind of person, I still am, that when I make my mind up, I just stick with it. And that was just my path from 13.
Wow.
So, but I had a full circle moment, because when I was hired to be the controller at Arch, this lovely lady was sitting at reception, and I was like, oh, hi, I'm here, I'm starting my first day. And this lady's like, I know you. You are that little girl who used to come around with the checks. And she was the somebody who used to run the IT. Shout out to Carmelita Lambert. God bless her. I love her so much. But, here I was in my first big job, you're kind of feeling proud of yourself. And she reminded me, you're just that little girl who, don't forget where you're from.
Yeah.
So, but she was always lovely. So, yeah.
That's amazing. But that's a cool part about Bermuda.
That is such a Bermuda story.
Such a Bermuda story. Like, you're not going to hear that in many other places. No. Like, what I mean? I remember you used to pass around the checks.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? But I think that that's a part of us too. Like, that's really a cultural Bermuda thing. Like, I know who your people are type of thing. And that small island vibes, but I love that about it. No matter where you are, I always say you're 1 degree of separation away from someone.
And it keeps you humble, because your feet are firmly grounded on the earth. So you can't get into that ego space, because we all know who you are and where you came from, and you're no different than anyone else.
Absolutely. So. No, I totally get it. So you say you were shy, but I feel like you don't seem very shy to me now. Like, what changed? What happened?
I don't know, but my best friend from childhood always says Michelle didn't speak forever, and then when she started, she never shut up. And funny enough, I've been doing a lot more public speaking these days, and I really enjoy it. So I think part of it is, this is where age is always a good thing. I think it's growing into your own and knowing your message.
Yeah.
I would say when I probably got started in my career, that was probably the shift for me when I started working at Arthur Andersen. There was a real confidence circuit where I knew I was smart and I was working hard, and I liked the work I was doing. I liked the people I was working with, and you kind of get that feedback loop that you're doing well, and it propels you. And kind of the switch went at some point, probably in my early 20s, where I suddenly became very career focused and very kind of ambitious and confident in myself and in that level. So, and it's just fed it. And now I think at this stage of my life, there's an element of there's so much rhetoric in the world that I think we actually owe it to use our voices for good. So like your podcast, and I think you have to counter it. You have to use your voice to counter it.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think sometimes I had someone on the podcast before. Zanika, ironically, is also an accountant, and she self-proclaimed a shyer person and a bit of an introvert. And she said on the podcast, she was talking about, you have to figure out what's better, staying quiet or actually speaking up in the moment. And it's almost pretty much identical to what you're saying there. And so it's interesting how those personalities are similar with the different careers that people take.
Well, the energy person in me would say, like, you have to counter energy with what you have, and whether that's your voice, whether it's your energy, whether it's in the immediate community in front of you, or whatever your reach is. I think you have to use that for the influence you want to see in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were a CFO for 13 years at your previous company, and what would you say that experience was like, and how it pretty much shaped you to kind of what you're doing now?
So it's the CFO, I kind of grew into that role. And the great thing was I had the opportunity to come into the company at startup. So we really built it together. And if anything, it really proved to me that I think, when I look back at the company, what really made it so successful in those early days was just the group of people. I think that's where the sum of the parts is, the whole is greater than the sum of any parts. We had this synergy, and we just had this really dynamic environment. And I think, if anything, it showed me, through my journey there, I think I learned my own value. I think there's, as you go through life, like I was there ultimately for 16 years. And, like anything, there's this initial rush where you're like, oh, I'm doing well, I'm doing well. Then you kind of hit a point where life is, for me, I had my family, so you're not as focused on your career, more at home. And then you do also hit a point of where you have doubts. And, I hit a place where I felt like, I was the only woman in the room, the only accountant in the room, the only keep going. And I had an experience that kind of showed me those things that make you different are your superpower.
Absolutely.
And so that's really shaped kind of the next chapter for me, which is really owning your value. And I think one of the most important things, I think one of my special talents is I see value where others don't. So it's how can I use that to help propel growth if you're a company, if you're an individual, how to see your own value and your own agency to make a change or the strategic shift in whatever you're trying to do. So I think that experience really has defined, like, okay, this is a different chapter that I want, and how do I want it to look, and how do I be intentional about it?
Absolutely. So would you say that is kind of what propelled you into this new kind of space you're in as as a non-executive director, as well as like a strategic advisor? Like, was that planned, or were you pretty strategic about that? Like, walk me through that step.
Yeah, for strategic advisor, I was very unstrategic about it. So I had hit a point, in my last 2 years, I was in the chief transformation role, which was all about respect for people, leadership, operational efficiency. But I was traveling every week, and I had a young family still. And we kind of hit an inflection point where I needed to make a decision. Did I want to go the operations route or the finance route? And I literally just had this moment where I was like, neither. Like, I remember very clearly this kind of moment of, I'm done, I need a break. And I think it was a combination of burnout. I think I just felt frayed. Like I was looking at the options at the company, and I didn't find either of them appealing. And when I looked in my home life, I could see I really had been neglecting it. And health-wise, I wasn't in a good place. And I literally just turned to my husband and just said, I'm done. And he was like, okay. And so I left at the end of 2019 thinking, okay, I'll take a break and probably go back somehow. And then COVID happened. And during COVID, my sister went through breast cancer and chemotherapy during COVID. And I had to homeschool my young son who had ADHD, which was really not fun. My daughter struggled with anxiety, and it really shifted my priorities. And I just realized I didn't want to go back into that environment because I wanted a life where I was more involved with my kids. So I did not know what I wanted to do. So I did what I called a year of yes.
Okay.
And so from September 2019 for about a year, I said no to any work stuff that came my way, and there were opportunities to go back into industry. And I said yes to everything else. That's how the Reiki came up. I went on a painting retreat. It was virtual because it was COVID. I took up archery. I took up a challenge to
Archery.
yoga. Yeah, I did a challenge to yoga every day, which I did for 2 years. So I
Wow.
just kind of explored. I think I was so burned out and so focused on work before, I'd forgotten what made me happy. And in that year of yes, someone challenged me to have 200 meaningful conversations. And this is the advice I give anyone who's looking on how to change careers, how to break into directorships. Go meet 200 people. And it's like networking at a completely different level. And because you have a clear purpose in what you're trying to understand, and for me that was, I'm in a period of transition. I don't know what to do. Tell me about a transition in your life. It was just, how do I learn from these people? I think at some point, my name just kind of got out there. And that's actually how the boards found me.
Got it.
So I think I was really lucky in that. I almost fell into it. But then once I started to get the calls, the way with boards, it's a very strange interviewing process. They have lots of meetings and then you never hear from them again. So it took a few before I found one that was like the right fit. And one of the things I learned as well is in the beginning, you're almost like, yes, okay, I'll do it. And they didn't work out, and that was a great thing. And I realized, I'm like, okay, I have to show up the way I want to be with what's important to me. And when I feel like I truly was confident in that space in the kind of interview process, that was the first board. And then literally the day that board was announced, I got a call for another board.
Wow.
So I was able to start building a portfolio.
Yeah.
And then, in all of that, there's an element of, well, if you could do anything for free, what would you do? And for me, that's always been mentoring people. And I met a lot of people who are at a crossroads in their career.
Significant. Yeah.
And they're stuck. And I'm a big believer in you have agency, you have choice. If you feel stuck in that job, you can choose to stay in the job, or you can choose to look at other options. So I do a lot of work around how do I help someone look at all of the options that they have available and choose something different if they're not where they were, or if where they are is like, okay, I want to choose this for these reasons. Okay, well, how do we make it more of a full life for you?
Yeah.
So
No, that's pretty much, as we discussed before, what I do pretty often, but in-house at my company. And it actually is really powerful to see someone go from being in that stuck place to in the place after that, like whatever that kind of looks like for them. I think that's actually probably the most rewarding part of that process. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. When someone realizes what they're capable of or what their own value is. Like, I think that was something I struggled with. So when I see someone like click, like, wait a minute, this is what I bring to the table, and I can do all these things, suddenly they're unleashed. I think that's the best feeling in the world.
Absolutely. So, quick pivot. Tell me a bit about these 200 conversations. Like, who did you decide who to choose to meet? Or like, were you just randomly like, hey, that person looks interesting, I want to meet them?
Well, it started, the person who challenged me, it said, I'm going to introduce you to the first two.
Okay.
And then when you have
2 out of 200? Tell them they need a better ratio
start
than
with
that.
the first two. And then she said, when you meet with those two, ask them to introduce someone else. So that's how it started. And then because it was COVID, everybody was happy to have a 30-minute Zoom call. And because it's Zoom, it's going to be 30 minutes. That was just a break between the constant meetings that everybody was having at that time.
Yeah.
And I met people like around the world. And then I started applying as Bermuda began to open up. I think that's really all it is. It's being open to meeting new people, much like how we met, right? Like, I think you were open to approaching me and I was opening to the conversation. And often that's really the shift it takes. I would have said when I was in my corporate life, I really was going through life with blinders on in terms of like, this work is so important. This is what, it was very insular to the company.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm very much more open, and my daughter tells me like I'm the world's greatest networker, but I don't consider it networking as much as I love making new connections with people.
But I think that's really what it is. That's networking. And a lot of people, and I hate the phrase that you either have it or you don't, but being good at networking is a true gift. Like, some people really just are not good at it. You know what I mean? Being able to work a room and meet people and be pretty unapologetic about going up to someone and introducing yourself is something you can teach someone to do, but someone who's naturally good at it far excels in that scenario than anything. That's one thing I always am like, wow, I wish everyone could do that, because not everyone can.
I actually think everyone can get to a place that they can, and I think it's keep it simple. Have one question for somebody, because at the end of the day, what I've learned is nobody wants to be pitched to, but people are happy to talk about their own experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So how many people have you interviewed,
It's true.
So I tell people, like, have one question and have it be a thoughtful question. Like, don't lead with what do you do? If you're at an event, then use something from the event to anchor that question. Or in the 200 questions, for me, I was in a period of transition, so that was my anchor point.
Yeah.
So you don't need to carry on a conversation for 2 hours. So 15 to 20 minutes, like one question can carry a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And you're absolutely correct. People, as much people like, oh, I don't like to talk about myself. It's actually the easiest subject to talk about when you really think about it, because nobody knows you better than you, right? So, I mean, you're, and obviously reading your bio and looking you up, like you're very often regarded to as someone who is a pioneer in the industry, right? In terms of insurance, just for everyone else's knowledge, like what would be your definition of leadership? And then how has that evolved over time?
Leadership is respect for people. So I would say, so I think having started my career so young,
13, I mean,
I got to see a lot of leaders.
Michelle.
I saw a lot of examples, and when I look back at the people who I grew the most under, I learned under the best. They really, and someone who comes to mind specifically, Scott Hunter, who ran Arthur Andersen. And so here was someone who was a partner in one of the top audit firms in the world, but most of his staff were under 25.
Yeah.
And as a 25-year-old, I started there when I was 17. So, but I always felt respected and seen, and that there was opportunity for me. And Scott never made us feel like we were young or immature or any of those things, which probably were, because we worked hard and we played hard too.
Yeah.
But
that's important. Good balance.
Yeah, especially at that age. So how it changed over time was when I was in the Chief Transformation Officer role, I had the chance to mentor with somebody who had gone to Japan and studied under Toyota and some of the founders of lean thinking in Toyota, the Toyota production system, just in time. It kind of goes under different names. And it really honed that to some very simple tenets. And the first is respect for people. And then the other one is always trust the expert. And the expert is the person doing the job.
Yeah.
So what I always used to say is, I think for anybody working in any position, you need to know where the company is going. You need to know your role in where the company's going, and you have to have some say over how you get to do that role. I think if, as a leader, you can put that in your culture, I think you're going to have really happy employees and people who are fulfilled in what they do.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you're spot on. I stand on my soapbox all the time about, culture and leaders and how they really are the change, and what you see, they direct what that looks like. And I wish most leaders thought about leadership from that viewpoint, as opposed to the traditional way of how people think leadership should be. I think that's absolutely key in everything that we do all the time.
And I think that was the differentiator for me when I was interviewing for the boards. In the first couple of boards, you feel like you have to be that technical expert. You need to know what's going on in the insurance market, that very technical. And when I realized, I'm like, I don't really want to talk about those things. I can talk about those things. I can talk about the financial statements, but what I'm really interested in is, how are you building a foundation for growth? What kind of company do you want? What do you want beyond the bottom line? Lots of companies, there were lots of interviews that kind of went sideways when I started asking those questions, because they were like, we're just in, take advantage of the market and get out with an ROE. Whereas the companies I've always gravitated to is, there is a mission greater than just the bottom line.
Yeah. But those are also the companies that really invest in their people.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? And don't get me wrong, we have business imperatives, we have numbers that need to be hit. I think that's all important. But people who understand that their people are the most important, and that's how you're going to get the best, them producing their best, that's paramount with any organization.
I agree. And those are the people I want to be in the room with.
1,000%. I totally agree. I say that all the time. But where I initially was introduced to you was at a conference that we were both at. And you were speaking on this panel, and I think it was about leadership. And one of the gentlemen, just for everyone's knowledge, Michelle was the only woman on the panel. And there were other men on the panel. And one of the gentlemen essentially making a point around men in leadership need supportive wives at home. But he was making a very blanket statement about leadership, and the assumption was that it was all men, one with you sitting next to him. But then you very eloquently were like, and husbands too. And like every woman in the room was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Because the narrative has definitely shifted around what leadership looks like. But can we talk a moment about what that representation looks like for women today in terms of leadership?
You have to ask me that question more specifically. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So what does it mean, like, in terms of representation for women in leadership today? Like, we have some women in leadership, sometimes we don't, but that narrative, that traditional narrative of men in leadership with supportive wives at home, and everyone having like that thought process of that's what that traditional leader looks like. How do we kind of shape that a bit different? Because there are husbands at home too, to wives who have huge jobs. Many of them have been on the podcast. How do we shift that?
Well, I love Christy Hunter R. Scott always says you can't be what you can't see.
Yep.
And so I think the reality is you just need to see it. And the one thing I want to say in the moment I said husbands, but you know, partners come in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Totally.
sometimes those partners are, you know, like can be a grandparent or whatever. So I think seeing all the combinations, first of all, seeing other people in leadership other than just white men. You know, there's lots of really capable people and giving people opportunity, having different ways of showing up in leader. And one of the things is there's always so much focus on corporate leadership, and that's always been my focus, but leaders come in all different areas of life. So what I've learned from my kids is like the sports coach is just as important a leader as, say, my boss. Like they have a lot of influence. But I think women need to make it okay. It's just if we focus on women specifically, because that's the area I know best. I think when you see women in leadership, women with children in leadership, women who are divorced or single or with a spouse, you know, you have to see all iterations. And I think I've always connected with people over is I'm very real about it.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started traveling to New York, I was working with a group of New York women lawyers, and this was like the most hardcore group of, you know, intimidating women you can imagine. And we bonded over our children and the guilt we had between really loving our careers but losing the time with our families and trying that balance. And one of them made the comment of, I was the first leader she'd seen in that position. And then I was the first woman leader she'd met that was real about the challenges of being a woman in business. And I don't really know how to show up any other way but how I am. So I think when women make it okay to say like, oh, I've got, my kid's got a recital and I'm gonna leave for it, or there's an assembly, or my kid's sick, I'm gonna be the one to go home. I'm not gonna call the partner and tell them to do it. If you can, I think it makes it okay for everyone else to say, okay, I can exist in that position with the life I have.
Absolutely. And whatever your support looks like, that's up to you. Like, you know what I mean? And whatever you need to do to make everything work for you, I think that that's totally fine. And it works for everyone, whatever you choose to do, that is.
But the key is you need the support. You know, it truly does take a village. And I think that's the difference is you need the partner behind you because it's really hard, especially the higher up you go in, at least in corporate, you know, living, the higher you go, just the environment can be so political, can be toxic. You feel very alone because you don't have peers, especially as a woman at a very high level in corporate Bermuda or corporate America, whatever. But I felt very alone. My peers were all men. They all had the wives with the nannies and the housekeepers, and God bless my husband, I had him and I had my parents, but like I didn't have the army that they did. So I think the more that you have that support behind you and you know who's got your back, you know who your trusted people are, even outside of the office, that you can kind of be yourself with and take your problems to. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one thing about your husband that people might not know, but it makes a huge difference in, or had made a huge difference in your ability to lead and, you know, rise in your own career?
So I think people who know my husband is what you see is what you get. And he's an Iron Man, so he's very disciplined and very focused. So I think people who know him know those things about him, and that really sums it up. And I think he's not ego driven, and he was always really supportive. So maybe what people don't know is he's a really good cook. So he used to do all the cooking before we shifted, and now I primarily do the cooking, unfortunately for him, but fortunate for me. But yeah, he's steadfast, and whether it's doing 50 miles on the bike or Michelle's off to New York again, he was always very steadfast. But I'm pretty sure anyone who knows my husband knows that about him without a doubt.
Yeah. And I'm from obviously knowing you this short period of time, he also seems incredibly supportive. Like, not very many people will be like, you're done, and be like, okay, cool, let's figure it out. Like, how has that support been for you?
The fact that I could step out and there wasn't a discussion on finances, there wasn't a discussion on what will we do, there wasn't a discussion of what next. He just was accepting. There's a level of acceptance that is pretty special, actually. Like, we have our odd moments, and we can argue over like which oven to buy, but the fact that I'm like, this is how I feel about something as important as my career, and he was just like, yep, that's okay. It shows that he knows I know what's best for me, and he respects me. So I think when you have that support, it opens up possibility, because clearly if I didn't have it, I wouldn't have been able to just step out, and I wouldn't be where I am today. So
Absolutely.
it's pretty.
And he probably knew you needed the break too,
Well, sometimes I joke, I'm like, I think it was a testament to how frayed life was that he was like, oh, thank God, like, I'm done with this.
Exactly.
So, but that also wasn't what he led with. So,
which is also nice.
Yeah,
right?
he was a pretty smart guy. I guess I'll keep him around so long now.
No, it's funny. So how are you being really intentional about this new phase in life?
Yeah, so I think it started with the boards, kind of being intentional of, this is what I want to talk to the CEOs and the equity backing these ventures about. And it was more than just, what kind of underwriting do you want to do? What type of shop do you want to do? How, and every board I joined, I feel like there's a purpose to it somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really amazing group of people that I have worked with. So that was the first thing. So to the extent that the work I was doing, I feel like it's aligned with what I do. And then even in this next chapter, I'm doing a lot more speaking, and at some point I'll sit down and do a bit more writing, because I quite like to do that, and working more with individuals. I think it's intentional from the point of view, again, of where I feel like there's an energy in the world that's very counter to what we've all known. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if I want to be that opposite reaction, I have to put something into it. And so I do accept the thing. I'm taking more speaking engagements. I'm putting myself out there on the stage in a way I never did before. I met this woman once, and she described herself in 3 concentric circles. And she said, this is me, and these are my values and what I believe in. And these are the people I surround myself with, whether they're family by choice or family by blood. And then this is the work that I do. And it was the first time I'd seen this work-life integration. Like, everything she did and the people she surrounded herself with were so aligned with who she was. And so those are leading principles for me, is when I get a call or an opportunity, or when I'm choosing not to do something, it's like, okay, is this in alignment with who I am, what I believe in, what my priorities are, and how I want to show up? So I'm much more conscious about that, and thinking about it in what I do. And even the times you're like, I don't feel like doing it, it's like, is that really in alignment? Okay, get your butt out there and do it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Michelle, I want to keep talking to you, but we're running out of time, and that's okay too. We can always do a part 2 if we need to. Yeah. But how I wrap up here with everyone on the podcast is when someone says your name years from now, and they're like, someone's like, hey, you know Michelle Seymour-Smith, what do you want to be remembered for in those moments when you're no longer around? And obviously, touch wood, that'll be a very long time from now, and you're enjoying all this new phase of life that you're in. But what do you want to be remembered for?
I think there's 2 principles that are really important to me, and one is knowing your own value, and then the other is having your own agency and having control and choice over what it is you're doing. And so I tell my kids all the time that anything is possible, which is the Iron Man slogan, but I'm like, anything is possible if you want it and you go for it. And I hope that whether it's my kids or whether it's someone I worked with or my closest friends, I hope they always feel like I felt like I could do anything with Michelle. Michelle believed in me, and Michelle saw what the value I bring, and they see their own value bring, and they really feel empowered. Because I think when you hit that stage of empowerment, when you really truly realize what you're capable of, like nothing can stop you. And it's this feeling of being unleashed. And I hope that's the feeling I leave people with.
I love that. It's amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us today. I really do appreciate it. I think we got some amazing gems here today. I'm like my brain is processing on what we're gonna put out and all those things.
That's
so
good.
I love it. I'm super intrigued.
There were a couple
by all
I'm like,
of it.
oh, I bubbled that one, but
No,
that's
definitely.
okay.
None of it. We would never
It was
know which
fun.
one it was.
You're
but
amazing.
Thank you so much. Oh, I
You
appreciate
really
it.
are. No, like
Thank
I'm
you.
glad you're doing this.
Mhm.
So people's stories need to be told. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. All right, guys, thank you for joining us today. I had the amazing Michelle Seymour-Smith on the podcast with us today. If you guys want to learn any more about her, make sure you check out her LinkedIn page and you can ping her on there. You can be her 210th person she may need or whatever number she's on now. And I hope you got something valuable and meaningful from this conversation. As always, thank you to our sponsors, 59 Front, Brown & Company, and Scooter Mart. And as always, thank you for spending time with me today on Hustle Her Podcast.